Hello, everyone, and welcome to our BIN Chapters Week community call. My name is Dr. Asma Bashir, and today we'll be telling you everything that you need to know about starting a Black and Neuro chapter. For today's presentation, we're going to go through a few key elements. I'm going to introduce you to the wonderful team that makes up the Chapters Committee. Then we'll walk through what it means to become a BIN chapter. That includes outlining the chapter goals, talk about chapter establishment and chapter evaluation. And then afterwards, we'll have some time for Q&A. But let's start with meeting the wonderful team that makes up the Chapters Committee. So first, let's kick things off with Jheannelle.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jheannelle Johnson, and I am a Neurodegeneration Computational Fellow at Stanford School of Medicine. I am also the Black Neurodevelopment Director. Passing it to Emmanuella.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emmanuella Bassey. I'm a recent master's graduate in cancer biology, and I also have the privilege of serving as BIN's chapters manager.
And my name is Asma Bashir. I'm currently Public Engagement Manager at King's College London in the UK, and I serve as a member of the Chapters Committee for Black and Neuro. We are very lovingly supported by our wonderful board of directors, and I'll quickly name them with their first name only just to make sure we give them the shout out that they deserve. We have Deshane, Amira, Ashley, Christine, Cleana, Paige, and Victoria, and they really support the mission of Black and Neuro to make sure that wonderful programming comes out of this network, and we also connect individuals who are invested in and propagating neuroscience around the world. And alongside the board of directors, we have the wider Black and Neuro team, and all of us have been working together for a number of years, but Black and Neuro itself as an organization and as a nonprofit was established initially in 2020 and established as a nonprofit in 2021. We have 4 chapters that we support at the moment. We have BIN DMV that launched earlier this year during BIN Week in Washington, D.C. We had our in-person conference and they had their launch event then. We also have BIN Boston, which is supported by a number of students and researchers from across a number of institutions, including BU, MIT, and Harvard. We have BIN Manhattan, of course, and we have BIN New Haven. Now, you may have noticed that Boston, Manhattan, and New Haven have asterisks next to the city names, and that is because they're in the process of becoming full-fledged chapters. BIN DMV is considered one of our full-fledged chapters, so they've gone through the entire chapter's establishment process, but Boston, Manhattan, and New Haven are currently working towards that, and we imagine that their process will be completed within the next 6 to 12 months if all goes well. Now, it's worth noting that all of our budgets for 2025 and into 2026 have already been approved. And what that means is we are not currently onboarding any new chapters until the end of our fiscal year. But we do very much encourage you to congregate informally within your local community. This will bolster your applications if you already have established connections and you have a team that is already congregating to potentially establish a local chapter of Black and Neuro. So let's take a few moments to talk about chapter goals. What are the things that we want you to keep in mind when you set out to establish a chapter? So first, we want a chapter to provide students with the opportunity to gain knowledge and insight into the field of neuroscience through neuroscience-focused programming and attendance at BIN-affiliated programming. We also want to promote the interaction between chapter members and established neuroscience professionals. And why is this important? We believe that networking is one of the tenets of success when it comes to pursuing a neuroscience career, and this is one of the ways that we feel you can do that. And lastly, but quite importantly, we want to encourage the growth and continuation of neuroscience-related careers through the exchange of knowledge and through active collaboration, again, between chapter members and neuroscience professionals. So that just really, emphasizes what I was talking about a few seconds ago. All right, so what are the requirements for forming a chapter? We have a few things that, again, we want you to keep in mind as you're starting to think about establishing a chapter in your local region. The first thing is that a BIN chapter must not be located within 50 miles of your region of interest. Of course, there are sometimes caveats to that. For instance, a few weeks ago, we were talking about BIN Manhattan and how that might be one of our core centers, but we might have one less than 50 miles away in Staten Island, just because it's a bit challenging for people to get to and from Manhattan from other parts of New York City. But it also might make more sense for an ecosystem to develop in another region, even though they're physically close, they might exist outside of that space. Also, another one of our requirements is that a minimum of 3 registered BIN members are required to coordinate the startup activities for the chapter. And the idea here is that you have the intention of developing a committee, a full executive committee, and Emmanuelle and Jheannelle can tell you a little bit about the different roles in the latter half of this presentation. And the hope is that you have a minimum participation of at least 10 members within the first 90 days of activation. So those first 3 months are going to be very, very busy. But again, if you've already started to cultivate some of those networks and building your community before you've established a chapter, this requirement will be quite easy. We also then encourage you to review the BIN chapter checklist, and this is to ensure that you have all the necessary components. If you're viewing this recording, we will include the link to this PDF in the description of our YouTube description. And we also would require you to complete the Black in Neuro New Chapters Interest Form, after which you'll be contacted by one of us, either myself, Jheannelle, or Emmanuella, so that we can discuss next steps about building your chapter. So I'm now going to hand over to Emmanuella and Jheannelle to talk about chapter evaluation, which will be broken down into 5 subtopics: governance and leadership, financial management, member engagement, program implementation, and compliance and reporting. So, Emmanuella.
All right, so taking it away with governance and leadership, the most important part of a chapter is its foundation. The foundation comprises of people, being the people that come together and say, hey, we want to establish this new chapter on our respective campuses and ensure that there is a hub or a safe space for people identifying as Black and neuro or interested in the neurosciences to come together. As Dr. B touched on earlier, within the first 90 days or 3 months of being activated as a chapter, it is essential that you have your core people of leadership, namely being the president, secretary, and finance director for that time being, so that you can carry out pseudo-chapter evaluations and operations rather. So going a bit deeper into governance and leadership for criteria, the membership must be obtained by chapter bylaws. In addition to the roles that I mentioned previously, president, secretary, and finance director, we also have requirements in existence for the roles of communications director and programming director. But the first 3 roles are of greatest priority, as this will ensure that the chapter can get off of its feet within the first 3 months. Secondly, the positions of the other executive committee roles need to be filled and ensure that members are actually able to be active and have the bandwidth to commit to their roles as chapter executive members, because the last thing that we want is individuals saying yes to a role and not being able to fulfill their requirements or commitments down the line. Thirdly, there must be compliance with Black and neuro policies. As a chapter, not only are you a chapter, but you are an extension of the greater BIN entity, right? And we want to make sure that as you're operating, having events, using BIN's logo and face, you are acting in accordance with BIN's goal and mission. So that is incredibly important as a leader of a chapter. And then at every point in your existence as a chapter, there will be always evaluation and checks of the health of your chapter. Namely, there will be scoring on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being excellent and 1 being needing improvement. And there will always be evaluations going on as you continue forward. So diving into the second part of evaluation that is of utmost importance with us is financial management. So each chapter is given a specific budget for an appropriate fiscal year. It is essentially what is at their disposal to carry out specific events and things of that nature that they give to me in the form of a development proposal. So for financial management, we have our fearless leader, Victoria McCrae, who is essentially the end of the road for all things budget concerning chapters. There is a thing that I like to call the pipeline of 3 in effect with chapters, in that after an event is submitted for approval to me through our chapter's budget approval form, there's then execution of that event and approval of it. And then after that, the chapter comes back to me and says, hey, we had this event. And proof of that event is shared through the chapter's reimbursement form, where there's feedback from you guys about how the event went, number of attendees that came, how much was actually spent in the end, uploading of receipts. And then all that information saved in this lovely form is then presented again to Victoria to be reimbursed in a timely manner. So going a bit deeper into financial management, as I touched on a bit earlier, there is submission of a budget. That is essentially what the chapter is allowed to work with. And this budget, not only is it just what the chapter has at their disposal to carry out events, it is also a test to see how well the chapter is able to manage money before they're given that privilege of being an actually fully fledged chapter. So there has to be adherence to approved budgets and financial procedures because we don't want events that haven't been planned to just be planned on a whim and not be told in advance. There is a typical 30 days deadline that we like to give to chapters of notification concerning whether or not an event can take place. And then also proper record keeping and timely management of expenses and reimbursements. As I mentioned, the two forms that we use in our pipeline of 3. We really want these forms to get filled out and there to be, if it works for your chapter, even better, for there to be record on your end as well of how much is going out from the chapter each time, the number of times reimbursement has happened, and how much each chapter has in their budget so that there are no surprises one day when chapters want to plan an event and God forbid there's no budget left for things to be executed. Again, at every point, there is evaluation because this is a test to see how well that chapter can manage money and the scoring of excellent, satisfactory, needs improvement. And this will be communicated to you after a certain number of events to make sure that you are aware as well of how well you've been managing your chapter's money. And now to Jheannelle for member engagement.
Alrighty, so membership engagement. What does it mean to be a member of Black and Neuro Chapters? What does it mean to be a leader of Black and Neuro Chapters? We have our lovely communications director, Ashley Cunningham, and she's an exemplary example of what it means to have a strong communication base, which is the foundation of our membership engagement. So for our chapters, regular, consistent, and clear communication is key. A lot of our chapters are able to maintain this regular communication, whether through monthly newsletters or consistently meeting each other, or even having group chats on social media platforms. The goal is community, right? We're building out these regional communities that are extensions of the broader BIN network because we have over 5,000 people in our directory. So if you can get together with the people in Manhattan or the people in Washington, D.C., we want that. That's what we look for. Consistent development of events and initiatives for your chapter. One of the goals of the chapters committee is to build out the neurosciences through whatever your vision is. Maybe there is a need that is not being met with our broader organization that you can implement there right there in your own region. That's what we want when you develop these initiatives. For example, our Black and Neuro DMV chapter is centrally located at Howard University and is a hub of HBCUs. They cultivate a lot of their events and initiatives around those ideas because that's the community that they are serving. So we want our membership to be engaged, to be informed. Those are the ways that we're able to do that. And of course, developing a consistent presence on social media. For those who are unfamiliar with Black and Neuro, we started as a virtual movement, all from a tweet. It's what we call it in our organization, right? And so we want the chapters to continue to build out their platforms on social media and be an extension of that. And we, as both a committee and an organization, will echo that visibility for you on our social media platforms. So those are just the different ways that chapters members can be engaged and how leadership can do that. And again, there is evaluation with everything else. We want to improve. We want to give you guys feedback so we can continue to do that. So if you have a lot of in-person events and social media and communication engagement, that's what we love to see. It's an A+ in our book. If you do need help with that, maybe that you're struggling to maintain your social media presence, or maybe you need a little more of a consistent schedule with programming for in-person events, that's where we step in as a committee. We will give you guys the resources and support that you need in the form of professional development and leadership engagement through workshops and even just one-on-ones that are being held with chapters managers and financial planning. And our goal is that we want this to be a fruitful experience for not only your members, but for you as well as you continue in your neuroscience journey and in your career. And moving on to program implementation, our lovely co-directors of programming, as you see here, do a wonderful job of that across the board from the top down. And so naturally, it's fallen into the chapter's ecosystem as well. So for programming implementation, we want you to execute these events. Whatever your vision is, we want you to dream it and do it bigger, right? And so executing these events and activities that are aligned with your chapter's goals and the broader organizational mission is key for us. We want you to collaborate with other chapters and local partners. At the end of this week, we will have our chapter's leaders retreat, which is an annual retreat we have with our community of chapter leadership to meet each other and fellowship and celebrate the work that's been done over the past year, but also come together and build this coalition of ideas and think and basically create a think tank for all the stuff that has been happening across the board in all these different regional communities. And so it's our goal that these program implementations are not just a one size fits all. It is a master build out for the chapter ecosystem and the chapter network to get involved. And also being an innovator, we want new and fresh ideas. We want people who are passionate. So if you have an idea for your region, whether that's collaborating with a local nonprofit, whether that's creating seminar series and building out mentorship that on a much more local level than what we've already established, those are the kind of things that we want to see. So if you're an innovator and you want to do chapter programming, membership, and community offerings, that is the basis of what our chapters are. And again, with that scoring, as Emmanuella mentioned, we have that development proposal that you will submit at the beginning of the fiscal year with your budget. If all of those are planned and executed successfully and have significant impact in the communities that you're serving, that's what we want to see. We want to continue to amplify that. And if you need additional help, like I said, we are a strong team. As you saw on the beginning slide, there are many people who are willing to help you execute this vision however you see fit. It's just a matter of asking and see if we can make that happen, right? So go ahead and, implement and be visionaries and allow chapters to be kind of your safe space to be creatives in that way, and build out the program that you wish to see. And leading us into compliance and reporting, Emmanuella.
All right, so as the final key portion of evaluation, compliance and reporting take the cake. So what we'd like to highlight in this respect is that, as Jheannelle had mentioned, there will be the development proposal that's submitted, but on the flip side of things, there's also in October of every year, submission of a chapter's annual report in the form of a presentation that'll typically take place during Chapters Week. So for Chapters Week this year, particularly on Friday, there will be a leadership retreat where we'll have chapter members or chapter leaders in particular come to do a tell-all, per se, of everything that's gone on from the beginning of their fiscal year up until that point in terms of events, number of members acquired, things that have gone well, things that haven't gone well, how they've been retaining people, and just anything that they feel comfortable sharing, not just with myself and the wider committee as people that will be evaluating their status and health, but also with other chapter leaders as well to give ideas of how things have been working for them and to also inspire how things can go for the next year. So to dive into compliance reporting specifically, so as I mentioned, this presentation will be going on, and there will also be an assessment of the finances and whether or not things that have gone through for this fiscal year are in alignment with the development proposal that was proposed at the beginning of the fiscal year. It's incredibly important for us to assess this because it is essentially a report card, per se, of how well you are able to, or the chapter per se is able to actually do what they said they were going to do. And then more importantly, it's an assessment of whether or not the chapter is able to adhere to deadlines and organizational policies, because we do have specific criteria that we want to ensure that the chapters are abiding by. Because although you see the three of us here, we are not the end of the road for decision-making concerning chapters, right? As Dr. B had shown you earlier, there's a whole army of Black and Neuro organizers and board members and everything like that that are also in existence that ensure that chapters can get what they need. But in order for there to be extension of resources to chapters, there has to be evidence that the chapters are actually engaging in the amount of events, having member retention and things of that nature, so that there could be evidence and support when the request for additional funding per se is made. And of course, per usual, evaluation. There will be nothing short of assessment of how well a chapter is doing, particularly through scoring on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being excellent and 1 being needs improvement, but you will be aware of how well your chapter is doing. All right. And to go into specifics with scoring and evaluation, so there are 3 categories, each scored out of 5 points with a total score of 25 being possible. There is excellent being the best, where we want all of our chapters to be, where chapters are exceeding expectations, doing above beyond all that we can ask, and are essentially serving as models, not just for others on their team, but for other chapter leaders to take from. Secondly, they're satisfactory, where the chapter is meeting expectations, but there are areas for improvement that we'd like for them to take note of, and we'll sit with them through an evaluation meeting that'll actually happen one-on-one with the chapter committee and each chapter leader, just to let them know of where there may be pitfalls and what they're doing. And finally, there's that needs improvement area where we hopefully don't want any of our chapters to be, where chapters are essentially failing to meet key expectations and have to take immediate action so that whatever is not being adhered to or followed gets taken care of. And with that, thank you so much for your time and attention for today. We know a lot of information was given to you in this short instance. So to remain in contact with us, feel free to email the chapters@blackandneuro.com email, and one of us will get with you concerning your questions. And then for a bit more information concerning our website, chapters in existence, and all that fun stuff, feel free to scan this QR code that will take you to our link tree where you can access all that information.